if you have a sibling. All right, that's almost 100%. So siblings are considered one of the most unique relationships that we can have with another human being. Usually, this is a person who you have grown up with in the same environment. They are a huge part of your memories. And for most, it's longer than the relationship we will have with our parents, our partners, and our friends. And like those people, research has shown that having a positive sibling relationship is actually linked to mental well-being. What does that mean? Think of a time that you have experienced something really difficult. For some, it could be potentially traumatic. Having a sibling who's there to support you truly makes a difference. And so, even though siblings may grow up in the same environment, they try to find ways to be different from one another. They also have their own experience and perspective of what it has been like to grow up with their sibling. Today I want to talk about a specific set of siblings, mixed status siblings. So mixed status sibling is a term used to describe a sibling dyad, where one sibling is undocumented, and by that I mean they're born in another country and they're raised in the US without proper documentation, and the other sibling is a US citizen. Now, these mixed status siblings tend to be raised in mixed status families, which is comprised of individuals with different legal statuses. So for instance, you can have one or two parents, maybe an older child who are all undocumented, and the rest of their children were born here, making them automatically citizens. And so now we know, as we've seen in the media, policies have a tremendous influence on our lives. This is especially salient for people who are from mixed status families. And so I was interested in learning more about how our current immigration system impacts the lives of siblings living within these families. And so, I interviewed 9 undocumented individuals, 3 males, 6 females, who have grown up with a US citizen sibling. They all identified as undocumented college students with DACA, which stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. This was a program that was implemented under the Obama administration, which basically gives undocumented youth who meet certain criteria a 2-year work permit and social security number, and this has to be renewed every 2 years. All my participants identified as Mexican-American, and they were all between 18 and 22 years old. They were born in Mexico, and they were all brought to the United States at various times, but before the age of 8. So they spent the majority of their lives here. They each had at least one sibling, and all of them also identified as first-generation college students. So that means that they're the first in their families to attain a college degree. And it was a privilege being able to hear and learn from them what their experiences have been. I asked them questions about what's it like growing up with a sibling who's different from you in terms of legal status, how did it impact your relationship with them growing up, your relationship with family members, specifically parents, and also how did it impact the way they viewed themselves growing up. So here are some of the things I've learned. Gratitude. So the majority of participants expressed that the differences in their immigration status was a source of conflict, and also a source of bonding. The greatest source of conflict for most of them was not that their sibling had privileges as US citizens, but that they felt that their sibling wasn't taking advantage, right? They weren't being grateful for those opportunities. For instance, one participant talked about how frustrating it was for her seeing her high school brother not take advantage of the various programs that were offered at his school when she, as an undocumented student, couldn't do so. Similar emotions were expressed by others: anger, envy, jealousy, resentment. At the same time, there were also positives. People talked about the immense gratitude that they had that their sibling did not have to experience the challenges that they were experiencing. They wanted to be role models for their siblings, loving and encouraging them to succeed, teaching them about their privileges, and to take advantage of them. Closeness. So the majority of the participants discussed how the difficulties of maybe growing up with a sibling who was different from them in terms of legal status also played a role in their relationship with their parents. Most of them talked about how they felt closer to their parents because they were undocumented as they were. They could talk, share about their fears, talk about politics, more so than maybe their sibling was doing. One person described their relationship as close. At the same time, there's also a lot of feelings of resentment. A lot of participants talked about feeling resentful to their parents for their hardships. and even more so feeling as though their parents were treating them differently than their sibling. For instance, one participant talked about feeling angry, feeling resentful, and at times feeling unloved by his parents because he, as an undocumented person, was expected to do more than his sibling who was a US citizen. Others talked about being compared by their parents, usually using the undocumented sibling as the high achiever, why aren't you doing as well as them, to the US citizen sibling, or vice versa. Parents who weren't acknowledging that their child, despite being undocumented, were doing just as good as their US citizen child. And lastly, empowerment. So growing up with a sibling has an impact on our identity. For these participants, the complexity of having a sibling with a different legal status had to some varying degree impact their identity. A lot of them talked about that as children feeling less than their documented sibling. One participant, she's the middle child and the only one who is undocumented, and she talks about asking herself as a child, why did this happen to me? Why am I the only one? What's wrong with me? Similar thoughts and feelings were felt by other participants as children. And now as college students, they feel more empowered. When talking about them, I asked them, what makes you different from your sibling? They said, I am much more of an advocate, I'm more social justice driven, I'm more compassionate, I'm stronger, I'm a hard worker because I've experienced these challenges. So, what did I take away from this experience? Our political system is impacting the lives of many people. About 16 million people say they are a part of a mixed status family, and within these are mixed status siblings. So, for those of us in positions of power, we can advocate, we can support these families, we can use our privilege of voting to make a difference. As I mentioned before, siblings have the potential of being a source of support, a source of protection. So given that undocumented youth are experiencing a multitude of challenges, having a positive sibling relationship can truly make a difference for them. All sibling relationships are complex, we can all love them and hate them at the same time, and for mixed status siblings, this is even further fueled by the differences between them in legal status. Sibling relationships are impacted and influenced by the relationships we have with others in our family. So for parents, one thing you can ask yourself is, how can I foster a positive and supportive relationship between my children? And also, despite the challenges that I speak of and that we hear of often, undocumented youth are resilient, right? They have found ways to overcome the barriers they've experienced with a sense of agency and empowerment. And in growing up with a US citizen sibling, they were able to develop a positive sense of identity. Siblings are probably our first friends, our first enemies, and it's a relationship that we can continue into adulthood. So if these relationships are nurtured from the very beginning, they can give us a host of mental health benefits, especially in times of difficulties, and even more so for communities that are marginalized, such as mixed status siblings. Thank you.